A do loop while is another conditional repetition structure, much like the do while, except that it uses a post-test rather than a pre-test. And that means that the code that we're going to perform in the loop will execute at least once. That process happens first, and then we evaluate the Boolean expression at the end of the loop. If that expression is true, we're going to repeat the process. If that Boolean expression is false, we'll exit the loop. Whereas in a do while, the process may never execute. So this guarantees the process performs at least once. Here's an example. So again, we're going to do some validation of input. We have the user enter a username. And our rules are that it has to be at least 8 characters, has to start with a letter A through Z, it can be uppercase or lowercase, and it may not contain any spaces. So the code for the button is, I'm going to create user as a string variable. It's going to be the name, the username they enter. Valid is a Boolean expression. We're going to use that to determine whether we need to repeat the loop or not. Upper is simply a string of all the uppercase letters. I'm going to use that to validate the first character of the username and make sure that it is a letter A through Z. And then here's the loop, do. And so we're going to do everything here between the do and the loop at least once. I'm going to show an input box that has them enter their username. Valid is a ternary expression. So valid equals if user.length is less than 8. We're going to guarantee they entered at least 8 characters. If they didn't, we're going to set valid to false. Otherwise, we set it to true. And then we move on to checking to see if it contains any spaces. So in this case, valid equals if user.index of a space, that location of a space, does not equal a -1, meaning it has a space somewhere in the username. We're going to set valid equal to false. Otherwise, we'll retain the value of valid. Initial then is going to get the substring of index 0 with 1 character of user. I'm going to convert that to an upper, so it's valid for either uppercase or lowercase. And then my next turn expression, the valid equals if not upper.contains initial. Now, if upper doesn't contain the initial, then that is a false value, but not makes it true. The initial letter is not an A through Z character, then we're going to set valid to false. Otherwise, we retain the value of valid. And then my loop while, remember this is occurring while a expression is true. Even though valid is Boolean, I'm going to say, does valid equal false? And if it does, that's a true expression, and we repeat the process. Once they enter a valid username, then we're going to show a message box that welcomes them and reiterates the username. Let's try this. I'm going to click enter username. I'm just going to put in Stephen. That's 7 characters. It didn't like that. It needed to be at least 8. All right, well, let's do Stephen H. There's a space in between Stephen and H. It's not going to like that. So again, it's asked me to re-enter a username. Now, we're not giving any feedback on what's wrong, but hopefully they can figure that out. Let's do a 1, 2, 3 Stephen. And once again, it didn't like that because it didn't start with an A through Z. However, if I do Stephen 1, 2, 3, I'm welcomed. That's a valid username. If you just jumped into this video, you can see all the videos from the Programming Practicum playlist by clicking on the image in the lower right. And if you'd like to be alerted to future videos I create, you can click my picture in the top right to subscribe to the channel.